This is Conversations with Todd, which is just kind of a whimsical title for an opportunity for some of you anyway. I'm pretty long-winded, so actually very few of you, to ask a question or two about maybe something I've said or not spoken about that you're curious about. I don't like to deal with church business in this setting, but otherwise I'm pretty open. But and I see we have a couple of microphones, so wait for the microphone to come so that our friends that are live streaming can hear the questions as well. But before we do that, there was a question that Lisa asked. I don't know if you caught it at the start of the service in her opening words that I thought was just an excellent question, and I wanted to respond to it. She started off her reading with, "Can we as a species go on without hope?" Can we as a species go on without hope? And my immediate thought was, yes, we can. People do it all the time. In fact, I think that's one of the problems with the world today, the cynicism, the pessimism, the hopelessness that causes people to just repeat the same patterns over and over and over, often fear-based patterns in our world that lead to nothing but problems for ourselves and for others. But we cannot move forward without hope. Right? Hope is the catalyst for allowing us to change our ways and to create a better future. And the reason for that is because true hope is not a passive thing. We don't just sit around and hope that something is going to happen. Hope is not a belief that somebody is going to come in on a white horse and save us, whether it's because we voted for that person to come in and save us or not. Hope is the belief that we can make something happen. Right? We hope something can happen because we believe enough in our own agency to try to work to make it happen. There's no guarantees that what we hope for is going to happen, but if we believe that we can make a difference, then that moves us to act in a way. And to paraphrase Eric Fromm, you may recall from just a few weeks ago, who said hope is really, the act of putting your own shoulder to a door that is slamming shut and holding it open, even though everything and everyone around you tells you to close it. So that's what hope is. So obviously, we cannot change the world unless we believe that we can change it, and then that motivates us to act, to do what we can to make things better. So I really liked that, because I thought, yes, we can live without hope, but we cannot move forward without hope. Okay, so that was answered. Thanks for asking that question, Lisa. Where else? Mike has a question up here at the start.
To ask, what gives you peace, or where do you find peace in a world that has so much brokenness and relationships that are broken and seem to not be able to be healed because of such different views of the world?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there's a few things that help me out there. One is hope, right? I'm a hopeful person. I'm an optimistic person, and that drives some people crazy. I mean, if I get any pushback, it's my optimism, which saddens me because when I talk about making a better future, believing that we can make a better future, the folks who are angry at me have no solution for the future, right? It's like, no, you can't. Why are you so optimistic? And yet, it only leaves us in a place where there's nothing to be done. You just fold up shop and, I don't know, cloister yourself from the world and maybe live a mildly happy life until it all comes to an end. I don't know what the thinking is, but I think, again, if we're going to make the world incrementally better, right, and I do believe the world is incrementally better in many areas today than it was yesterday. And it'll be incrementally better tomorrow than it was today. We don't see those increments, but in many things, that's the case. So one is to be a hopeful optimist, right? That keeps you positive and peaceful. The other practice would be, I don't know if it's a practice or just a mindset, the Stoic sort of mindset of the first principle is, there are some things in our power and then some things not in our power. There is so much that I cannot impact. And so often the tendency is therefore to focus our emotional energy and our psychological energy on the things we can't change. We worry about them, we become anxious about them. Not to say that I don't, because I have those stresses myself, but for the most part I try to let the stuff eventually go. As I can't control other people, I don't want to control other people, I can't control, who's in the White House at this moment. Those sort of things. I can't control the fact that the world is burning up and drying up at this moment. Those are things that are out of my control. So I try to tackle the things that I can influence and change and alter and enjoy. There's a lot in the world to enjoy, despite the fears and anxieties that also surround us. So I think it's just remembering that, being optimistic and looking for the good in the world to help counterbalance. Now, I know some people who don't even watch the news, They're optimists, but they don't even watch the news. And it's like, exposing yourself to those things is not good for you and it's not healthy. You should just focus on good things. I don't think that's good for you either, because it separates us from reality, right? The problem is, as human beings, we've evolved to tune into the fear channel. That is how our species has survived and advanced for so long. So we're really wired to be afraid and to look out for the dangers in the world. And so that's what we see. That's the channel we're biologically wired to. But the world has changed a lot since our species evolved, and our biological bodies haven't changed, so we're still looking for the tigers and the serpents out there. So I just think we have to train ourselves to tune in other channels to counterbalance the reality of a fearful world, of a world where there's a lot of suffering and pain, because there is. We can't deny that, or we're misstepping just as badly, I would say, as just being an optimist. But to also train yourself to begin to look for the good in others and the good that's going on in the world will to me add to a happy life. I have gotten up, and I had a rotten childhood. Okay, I have gotten out of bed by no later than 5:30 in the morning since before I went to kindergarten. I was not a teenager that slept in. I love to get up and be about life in the world. And so optimism is a part of my nature. So those would be some of the tools that have helped me. Okay, we've got, I think, Don up here. We've got one coming, Don. Thank you, Doug.
I'm just kind of curious. After the death and loss of Happy Watkins, I wonder, have you been able to maintain some kind of relationship with the black community areas and some of the other minority movements around town?
Yeah, Happy Watkins, for those who don't know, was a friend of mine who happened to be a Baptist minister of a largely African-American church, passed away over a year ago now, I think, and we were pretty close. I have another friend who is also a Baptist, African-American man who's a Baptist minister, but no, I haven't. I mean, I don't, we're in Spokane, so it's not like there's a big representation. It's kind of the same throughout the state. I think it's still about 2% of the population happens to be African-American. There are a lot of other minorities and other immigrants, particularly in Spokane. Many of them tend to be, from Eastern Europe. So no, but I tend to relate to the people who come into my life. When I was growing up in California, in the Bay Area, we lived in a poor neighborhood, and so it was during integration, and so all the poor people were very diverse neighborhoods, and that was at a time where we were the experiment, right? We were the generation that was going to have to work out our supposed differences.
Big loss.
Yeah, it was a big loss. And when I moved away, I remember I went to college in Texas, and I knew this businessman. I worked after school as a janitor at a professional center, and this guy was a salesman of medical equipment, so he traveled all over. When I told him I was going to college in Texas, he says, "Texas? I hate Texas. Those people think the Civil War is still going on, And what I found out is that so much of the rest of our country, I know there's exceptions, but so much of the rest of our country remains largely segregated. I was really troubled a few years ago when Hillary Clinton was running, and I can't remember what the question was. She might have even gotten in trouble for it, but her response was she ended up referring to our black communities and our black neighborhoods. And having grown up in a neighborhood that was diverse, I see that as poison, right? I see that as, this thing where we move into neighborhoods, cloister into neighborhoods because of our differences. I find it to be harmful, and it prevents us from being able to be very eclectic in our relationships. And that seems to be the norm in most of the country, at least the places I've been and lived. So, but I like white people too. So, most of you. Okay?
I have a question, Todd.
Okay?
It was on an aspect of Meet the Press this morning in which they were interviewing Governor Abbott of Texas about the whole issue of the data centers and the opposition, the arguments for it and against it. And you taught us and shared with us so much about your interest in artificial intelligence and the benefits of it. But how do you see our community wrestling with this proposal for it to take place in our community and kind of that whole general area? I'd be interested in how you feel about it from the perspective of a user and a resident of the area that may be affected by water and electric overload.
Well, I mean, the problem with data centers, of course, is that they deplete water systems for communities, and they cause energy prices to go up. And many apparently make a chronic noise if they're too close to residents. So, I don't think that data centers are something that should exist. They're right now, they've become, I mean, in the form that they're existing right now, where it seems like companies are going to politicians, and politicians are sort of granting permits to build these things without much conversation. And what they're finding out, which I think is an incredibly positive thing, is there's an instant reaction from the community that says, no, we want to have a conversation here, or at least a voice in this. And this is something that is a bipartisan issue. In fact, the more extreme you are on both sides, the more you seem to agree on data issues. So it's a major political issue right now, surprisingly, given all that we have going on. But I don't think that data centers are the solution. We need to come up with other alternatives. A couple of the big alternatives that would really help immediately. The one that would really help immediately is if we all switch to desktop AIs, which is something I'm looking into right now. A desktop AI runs on about 80% is efficient as 1 year logging into essentially on the internet. So you're going to get the same sort of responses and answers and the information you need. There's so much information now that can fit on a computer memory in the memory. So you'd be surprised how much data an AI can hold on your PC. But they run at about 30% of what the energy required for what you're getting by logging into ChatGPT or Anthropic. So that would make the data centers actually obsolete if we all switch to those. And there's a great humanitarian who was really one of the leaders in starting the AI movement named Musaki? He just wrote a book called, which I'm reading now, called The Last Economy. And he's actually proposing that everybody has their own AI, and that AI maybe specializes in whatever you want it to. They can get together with other AIs and work on issues like cancer, but we're all benefiting from both the financial benefits of having our AIs working for us, but also that they are contained on our own devices, and that would eliminate a lot of the energy needs. The other big thing, if you missed it a couple of weeks ago, Elon Musk partnered with NVIDIA. They're actually now working on building the first data center in space, and that's going to be great. The energy would be transferred, from the satellites, but it's going to be completely renewable. It's always cold there, so they don't have to worry about as much energy to begin with, but they'll get constant free energy from the sun, and it's not going to impact us at all. So those are the solutions, and I think they will be exacerbated by the unwillingness of communities to have these data centers in places where we're already stretched thin, right? Energy's already going up in prices. Water's already a problem. The world is getting drier and drier, and we're having these terrible fires. So we don't need data centers. I'm against using that as a solution to the dramatic energy needs that these big companies want. Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Do you see a problem with people like Elon Musk controlling everything in a center in space? Because I do, and I wonder what your thoughts are on that and how we would prevent it from being used for ill against us. Does that make sense? I'm not sure what...
Yeah, I'm not terribly worried about it myself. I mean, I think there are, lots of very powerful corporations. Certainly Elon Musk is very powerful, but there are limitations and regulations and those sort of things in place to help make sure they're not doing anything too nefarious, or at least not getting away with anything too nefarious. There's a very interesting VR experience I just ran into a couple of weeks ago. You put it on, and it's a exact replica of what they call space junk. I wouldn't call all of it space junk because it includes the thousands of satellites that are up there. But if you get up there and look at the planet, and these things are all numbered. I mean, this is based on what's been actually tracked. And, there's a whole sphere around our planet of debris, if you will, satellites and old satellites and pieces that have broken off. And so there's a lot there already. But no, I mean, it'll surprise people for me to say that Elon Musk is a heroic figure for me. I don't agree with everything that that he's done. I don't agree with everything any of my friends have done, but this is an individual who said, global warming is a problem. I want to create an automobile industry, an electric automobile industry that was actually viable and successful, and he did. He said, there are people out there who can't move, they're locked into their bodies. I want to create a technology that allows them to have agency in the world again. I could probably ramble off several other major things that he's done that are for the good of humanity, including, the space program was dead, right? It almost died with the moonshot. The space shuttle wasn't really very successful, and there were several, space barons, if you will, who were wanting to open it up to commercial exploration. And Elon was the one who made that happen, and he did it by suing the federal government for giving NASA for giving no bid contracts. And he was told, if you do this, you'll never get a contract. And he's just a scrapper. This is a guy who grew up as somebody who had to fight for his life, and he didn't care. He's got more money than God, so who cares what? So he sued him, and he won, and that's what opened it up for Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos, and Richard Branson's excursions, and so many more now. So I think that Elon Musk gets a bad rap, and he's made some bad decisions. He certainly fell in love with somebody he shouldn't have, and thank goodness he fell out of love with him very quickly. For those who know who I'm talking about. But yeah, I tend to look at the good in humanity and also accept our flaws. So. Anything else? It's like bun. By the way, I commend Stephanie on her ventriloquism. I didn't see her lips move at all. It's a wonderful approach. I might adopt it. Yes, Doug.
Todd, I always like to hear you talk about your mystical atheism, and so what could you say about that currently? And maybe there are people here who haven't heard you talk about that.
Yeah. Actually, it was a term I got from Eric Fromm, many years ago, called atheistic mysticism. And almost all of the mystical traditions discourage us from talking about God. And they have these weird paradoxical statements like, the nearer you get to apprehending God, the less you understand God, refer to things like not to know knowing and this sort of thing. So it's called apophatic. It's an apophatic approach to knowledge where you try to get at the truth by stripping away your beliefs with the things you know, and it'd be kind of akin to, instead of being a painter that maybe dabs paint onto a canvas, you're a wood carver or a stone cutter that you find an image by removing what's there. Although for the mystic, they would never find the image because they would just keep stripping away until there's nothing left. As Meister Eckhart said, what is God? What is God? God is absolutely nothing. Yeah. So Fromm said, it's really a sin to talk about God. You should come to a point in your religious experience where you never even need to mention the name God, if you will. So for a long time I called myself an atheistic mystic, and that's probably really who I am, because that's my approach to truth and knowledge, right? That we can't really know anything with any certainty, so we need to be humble in how we approach others who might think differently than us. And then when I was here, I was my first week. I think my first day, my first Monday here, the news media called and said, "Hey, we want to come over and interview you. there was some campaign going on where I think it was humanists were putting up billboards in different places or bus signs that would say "Good without God" or that kind of stuff. And they had one here on the bus system, and the bus had initially refused to let them put it on the bus. And so they sued. They'd always sue. They'd sue because they'd create controversy, sue, and then it'd become free publicity for them. So apparently the court said, no, you have to let them put this on. So they wanted to interview me. I said, well, okay. I didn't know why. And they came and asked, what do you think of this? I said, well, I mean, as a Unitarian, we're glad. We believe in freedom of speech and freedom of expression, and I'm glad that the court's decided that this organization should be able to is free to express themselves as anybody else. You know, gave him a nice little sound bite, and then one of the reporters, actually the photographer, said, well, yeah, but doesn't this decision help you guys out? And I had no clue what he was talking about. And I said, well, I mean, not really. I mean, we don't have anything to do with that campaign, and you know, outside of being open-minded people who like to see this sort of thing, no, doesn't impact us at all. Well, that night, when it was reported on the news, they start off with atheist minister Todd Eklof, right? And I thought, well, there it goes. I'm done, you know. I mean, the first week, you know, and I'm labeled an atheist on the news. So what they must have done was went on Google and said, who are the atheists in Spokane? And my name came up because I define myself as an atheistic mystic. They don't know what that is, so they say, yeah, close enough. So they must have thought, therefore, the church is an atheist church, and therefore this is, you know, a campaign that worked well for us. But that really got me to thinking. One, I didn't get fired. And two, you know, there's a lot of gymnastics you have to go around when you start talking about your beliefs about God. And so if you want to maintain a belief in God and you're a liberal, you have to go in a really roundabout way to justify that belief, right? Like, so that people would understand where you're coming from. And most of the time when people ask, do you believe in God, they're asking, do you believe in a person named God? Basically the Judeo-Christian God. And the answer is no. And I thought, why am I doing all of these hoops to explain where I'm coming from when I can just say, no, I don't? Right, so I don't believe in a person named God. Now, do I believe that there may be some underlying force in the universe that connects us all, something bigger, that maybe there's some type of consciousness that we're not aware of? Yeah, I believe in those things. So, you know, if you want to theologize about anything, if you were to say, as the Christian tradition also does, it says God is love. If you're saying God is love and I believe in love, then I would say, well, yeah, and that, if we agree on the terms, then yes, I believe in God. Right? If you define the term and God as something different than what we mostly think of God as, a reference to a person named God who is obsessed about my beliefs for some reason and wants to send me to hell if I don't agree. No, I don't believe in that. So, yeah. So I nowadays I just say I'm an atheist. I'm an atheist and a mystic. But I'm okay with atheistic mystic too. So, all right. Well, so it's I think good time to stop. 12:02, and thank you all for your good questions and onward.